important to find out the right people and build the relationships with the right people who love what you do, who need what you do, and then the consequence of building that relationship is a sale.
Shay Lynch is Director of Future State Performance and was recently named as an All-Star Business Visionary for 2024 by the All-Ireland Business Foundation. He is a business performance advisor, author, and recognized thought leader, helping businesses make profit through system thinking. He's also an ultra-marathon runner and knows plenty about goal setting, resilience, and adapting, even when under pressure. Today, we talk everything from sales to leadership.
Listening to people is actually a superpower. You showing that you're listening to them and actually digging deep and demonstrating that you're listening is could be the only time that day that someone actually truly cared about them. So when you have strong purpose, that is what will bring you through the discipline when you need to. If you don't have that, the chances are you'll give up.
Now, how do you get discipline? This is a GK Media podcast.
This podcast is part of the GK Media Studios Creators Network, helping people tell their stories. Become a storyteller today and learn about our podcaster network at gkmediastudios.com.
Shay Lynch, founder of Future State, thanks so much for joining me on Garry Talks.
Great to be here, Gary, and thank you very much for the invite.
We have had a very busy day, so I'm a little exhausted. I don't know how tired you are, but it's great to have you in. We're working together today, and we've been working over the last number of months on sales strategies. And we're lucky at GK Media that there's two things that have worked so well for us over the last 11 years. One is a lot of work has come our way through referrals. So people have recommended us and people have come and they've enjoyed the process. And secondly, those who have enjoyed the process, which is 99.9% of people, it's continuous. So there's that retention of work happening all the time. But as I was talking to you earlier on this morning about our plans for expanding and extending our own physical premises as well, there is that need to scale and grow. And we focus a lot in our delivery services marketing.
Yeah.
But not a huge amount on sales. But it's that awareness of we need to, really focus on our sales strategy. And for me, at times, sales was always like a dirty word. And you were saying earlier, which was really interesting, is, as Irish people, we don't like being sold to. We don't feel like someone's about to sell something or doorstep us with the pitch or something like that. We completely recoil from that. And you changed my whole mindset when you told me that sales is really about
relationships.
Yeah.
And it's funny, Gary, if I can just go back a little bit, and when I started working for myself and I decided to be a business consultant, like I knew I had the skills to be a consultant, but when you work for yourself, you have to sell.
Yeah.
And that was my biggest fear, because I hated selling, because I hated being sold to.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what I needed to develop a mechanism to circumvent my own issues with selling is to learn the art of selling without selling, right? And I know that sounds quite contradictory. And there's a few things I came up with. And again, through my own challenges, I also discovered through learning my own process is that we don't like to be sold to, number one, but that's not the goal. The goal is to build relationships. And it's important to find out the right people and build the relationships with the right people who love what you do, who need what you do. And then the consequence of building that relationship is a sale. And the reason why, Gary, it's so important to think relationship before sale, because if you're just sale, we talked about the sales ecosystem earlier on, and there's different parts of it. There's the actual prospecting funnel, right? And then we have the after sales. And what you just said, what your company and you do very, very well is that referral element to it. We want to get all of those arms working together, and the branches, the ecosystem, the branches of the tree, because eventually when you do it really well, when you build really good relationships, then people will be talking about you when you're not there. Yeah. And you want that to be nice stuff. This will happen. This is Ireland. This is a small country. This is so important from a branding. So you mentioned marketing and sales. Before that, branding has to overshine all of these. And I say the word shine because you need to shine in front of your customers and deliver that above expectations process consistently. So then they'll sell for you.
Yeah, they
And
become your ambassadors.
they become your brand ambassadors. And even when you're doing the prospecting funnel, right? And even if people aren't interested in what you do, the goal is still to build a relationship. Because guess what? If they like you, they see the value in what you do and they don't need it themselves, they may know someone who needs it. And if you've given them a really good experience, left a really good note with them about you and your business, they will sell for you. Because guess what? If they believe you can help somebody, what do people in Ireland do? They love helping people.
Yeah.
And then if they can help someone get some pain relief and then you can provide it, they feel good. Their friend or referee feels good. And then you feel good. It's a win-win-win. And what we said about earlier on is there's 3 people in that relationship that have to win. The person who referred you, so you have to make them look good. So there's a 3-way win that has to happen, and it has to be strategic. So the goal of relationship at every stage of that, the prospecting, the after sale, the referral, the reason why that's relationship first is because then you get people working for you, right? If you're only focused on the sale, you have to go back to the start of the prospecting funnel all the time.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest and most
It is, yeah. It's trying to
expensive
get your foot in the door.
sale in the game,
Yeah.
right? So that's where I've developed this mechanism. Sell without selling, relationships before sales.
Yeah. And just to break it down visually for people as well in terms of the sales ecosystem, as Shay is saying there, like the first few steps of a sale, you know, if you just want to sell something, is, you know, getting your message out there, creating some impact, some magnets, some lead generation, some funnels, literally getting your message to the potential buyer and enticing them to buy. But if there's no relationship there, that's the end of the journey. And what we've been talking about today in terms of the ecosystem is if you're building that relationship, it flows into then taking care of them during the process, post-process of the sale, growing that relationship so that they do want to come back to you again. And then, as you're saying then as well, that they do go off and recommend you to others, and you've done a good job for them. You then do a good job for the other person that they recommend. So everyone is happy. So everyone gets you back. And that's what grows your circle and your list of clients as such.
Yeah, and this is the long game, as we said earlier on, Garry. But you have to build foundations, right?
Yeah.
You have to start at ground zero. And you cannot bypass it because it starts, as we've talked about on previous sessions, the branding element. What do you stand for? What is your brand persona? How do you make people feel amazing when they're in your environment? How do you give them amazing experiences? And how can you rinse and repeat that all the time? It's not about doing it once and having a really good bar. And it's like, I'll give you an example. I used to do a lot of work in Cork, and it was West Cork, and I'd go down on a Sunday. It was too far to drive on a Monday morning, and I love a relaxing Sunday evening. So I'd go down on a Sunday morning, and when I go to the check-in desk, they'd have a bowl of apples. And I loved an apple because then that would fuel me for a run I would do in the afternoon before I settle in for the evening. One time the apples weren't there. That is not their core service, Garry, but I looked forward to the apple.
Yeah.
And then eventually one of the ladies behind the desk asked me, what do you do? And I told them, and I was having a bit of fun about there was no apple this time. So I teach companies to continually exceed expectations consistently, create those exceeding points, those wow factors I call, but do them all the time. Because once you drop it once, even though it's not the core service, there's a negative impact subconsciously sometimes in the eyes of your customer.
Yeah.
So the next time I was in there, she had an apple on the bed for me.
Very good.
But do you understand the point? It's about developing a mechanism that you can go above and beyond a little bit. That's not
being consistent with that.
but being consistent. Yeah. And I always say, what are the simple wows that you can continually add? Because once you get the customer, number one, you want to get repeat business. The next thing you want to know is what other pains are they having that you can help them solve, and build that relationship and become their partner in pain relief.
This is an issue that I've often seen in business where people will set up a company because they want to sell this product or sell this service, and then they get really annoyed that they're not getting traction in either. And it's because they want it to sell this product or sell this service rather than knowing or researching if there is a need for it. And we spend hours today talking on pain points. And it's so important for people in business to understand what the pain points are of their clients / customer or potential customers.
Yeah, and it is, because what's the point of being inexistent? And there's many companies, big companies, that have got this wrong over the years. We talked about Kodak, we talked about Blockbuster earlier on, and you don't always know this, Garry, right?
Well, let's even just talk about Blockbuster. So we were talking about, and again, for Generation Z, this will probably go over your head because you're like, you did what to be able to watch a movie? But it was this idea, you'd go to the video store.
Yeah.
You would hope that the film you wanted to watch, because they'd only have a handful of cassette tapes, that they would have one in stock for you. I mean, you could have just missed it by 5 minutes. The person before you could have just gotten that video that came out this weekend. So you're hoping to get that cassette tape. And then you go home, you watch it, because you only have a limited window. It could be 24, 48 hours to watch this film. And then you have to rewind the cassette tape back to the very start again and return back to that video store and hand it in before that video store closed so you weren't fined.
Yeah.
And the quality of the video cassette tape diminished over time.
Exactly. And I know that story very, very well. I used to love movies. I used to spend an hour trying to find a movie if the number one film was not there, right? So again, you have to solve pain points in the eyes of your customers. What are their pain points? Now, you can do some speculation on that yourself. So you could have a starting point, which is great, but that's perception, Garry. And as I said, I often go into clients and I could ask 10 different directors, what's your biggest pain point? I get 10 different answers at perception from their perspective. But that's great for me, because now I have 10 data points that now I can actually get more data on. And then I can actually get the data to say, well, actually, these are your top three. And these are why they're the top three. Now, which one do we want to do first? And the whole point is to be targeted, solve the biggest pain first. Or you could do a parallel strategy where, how can we get some quick wins? Get people motivated to buy into the process as well and engage with them, right? And then you do a little bit bigger all the time. But problem solving in business is the number one thing that we need to do. You see the world now, Garry, things are moving so fast, right? And with so fast, people are not sure what direction they need to go. So helping them strategize, and this is for me, this is for you. And we talked about some great strategies of how you can not only give them amazing video production to solve their immediate need, but we also came up with some great ideas to solve their actual business needs through the mechanism of storytelling and video. Right? And that's about not just solving one problem, it's becoming their partner in pain relief. And why pain? Why not adding value? And I know from my own experiences, when I was a business consultant and I was going networking, and this is when we actually networked in person all the time, 3 or 4 nights a week, right? And I was so excited about being a consultant, right? And I go into these, and I genuinely was proud. I've made this decision. And when people ask me, so Shay, what do you do? I'm a business consultant. And I was like, this, yay. Well, I wasn't doing that in reality, but that was what I was doing inside. Then people just went, okay, great. And I was going, what did I say? And I started to get quite insecure. And
because, well, I suppose people feel that they don't need a consultant or something, that they're in the room, they know what they're at. And
not only that, they think I'm going to sell them. Right? Because one lady actually backed away from me, and I could actually feel the invisible dagger go through my heart. And this is no joke, Garry. I really felt it. And I said, look, do I smell? Like, I literally said those words. You've backed away from me. I said, why? People are doing this to me all the time. It hurts, right? And she said that because people think you're going to sell. And that made me think about, well, me telling them that I'm a business consultant is just telling them I'm pretty good at things. People don't want to hear that. People want to know how you can solve their pains, because they need pain relief. And I started to toy with a few different phrases and taglines. And I got some traction with adding value. And And people, yeah, that sounds interesting. But where I really got the traction when I started coming up with taglines that would solve their pains. One of the biggest one is companies run out of time. So they say, Shay, what do you do? I said, I give business back their time. And that's it. I would say no more. If they said something else, they were inviting me in to talk, and I'd go deeper and develop a two-way conversation. And then they go, that sounds really interesting, Shay. Do you have time for a conversation? And once I changed the story on how I spoke about what I do and how it solved their pains and not about the amazing stuff I can do, because when you tell them how you solve their pains, it implies that you're good at what you do.
Yeah.
The world changed for me, Gary. It really did. And it opened my eyes on how to talk. And we were talking about it earlier, that when you're talking through the different stages of the funnel, we talked about lead magnets, demand creation, lead generation, and then talking, we talked about when you're talking to people, it's all about them.
Yeah.
And this is not just relevant to business. It's relevant to people you're talking with. It doesn't matter what, personal, business, sports, friends, colleagues, whatever it is. It's about respect.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about caring about them. And what I say, I actually believe now listening to people is actually a superpower, because the world is so fast. Everybody cares about themselves. You showing that you're listening to them and actually digging deep and demonstrating, not just actually listening, but demonstrating that you're listening, is probably could be the only time that day that someone actually truly cared about them.
Yeah.
And that's not an exaggeration. That's the world we live in now. So you give your attention to them. Number one, you're asking about them. And we talked about how you develop conversations with them. And then when they ask you about you, Gary, it's still about them. Yes, you talk about how you can solve their problems, not about how amazing your services are. So it's always, when you're communicating with other people, it's always about them.
Yeah.
Always. And again, once I started to realize that, that's how I was starting to have conversations and deeper and going further down that sales funnel. And I was getting stopped. And then I realized, well, what do I need to do differently to get to the next stage? And as we were saying, the whole point is not about sales conversions. It's about taking feedback along the micro steps along that journey, and the micro feedbacks and the micro conversions. And once you get all them and you improve every single step along the journey, the sales conversions will look after themselves.
Yeah. So many interesting points there. And one thing about listening is, like, it's been proven now that for people, sometimes it's more important to feel that they've been listened to rather than the solutions that you shoot back at them.
Yeah.
And there's that thing as well of, the journey of sales is, it is a journey, and it's just learning during the process, making micro adjustments all the time. So you're improving your sales process. And even if someone doesn't want to buy now, they could be a buy later customer. So you just don't suddenly write them off. You still stay consistent with your messaging. And I remember I was at a networking event before, and people were coming up asking me, and I didn't have a snaggy tagline. I just say, we produce videos and podcasts, and all right. And it would be gone again. And there was people coming up, and it was basically a case of, are you useful to me right now or not? Is what they were saying internally when they were asking, what do you do? It's a horrible feeling. Put me off networking for a long time. But yeah, we have to have that approach of the interest in listening to people.
And it's a basic human need, is to be listened to, right? But it's not happening. And it's not anyone's fault, Gary. The world we operate and live in now, right, from a business perspective, everybody's overwhelmed. Everybody's to-do list, their priority list. There's no such thing as a to-do list with a few priorities. They're all priorities now, right? Everybody's overwhelmed. So, and why that's challenging on many levels, what's the opportunity for you? Number one, and we talked about this in the journey, you have a finite amount of steps to go from being liked to be trusted enough to try once. So the first point there is you have to be liked. Mm-hmm. How do you be liked? Like when you walk away from somebody that you've had a conversation with for the first time, first impressions, you often go, well, I really like that person and I don't know why. Mm-hmm. There's many reasons for it. One is that they probably asked the paid all their attention to you. They made you feel important and special.
Yeah.
And they truly did that, not just by asking you questions, by their body language. You could see, and you're taking information in a subconscious level. You don't even know why. But there's all these subtle cues that your brain takes in that you're not conscious always of. And then you have situations where I'm not sure about that person. I don't know why. Because maybe what they were saying and their body language wasn't congruent.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And
The people pretending to listen to you, but they're looking all around the room at who else is there.
But that's one. And then there's the other element, Gary, where people are genuinely nervous and they don't know how to act sometimes. They may feel a little bit intimidated by being in a great presence of a great person like Gary, right? Okay. People can be intimidated in environments. So there's many different reasons. So again, sometimes it's about, and we were talking about this, we won't go into politics, right? We were talking about even if you don't like certain candidates, I always challenge when I'm doing training my students about how can you remove your biases and actually take new data in again about someone that you don't like and think critically about them and take that information in. That is hard because we have biases for a reason. They're there to protect you, right? But we can use them. They help you make assumptions that are not always right. Okay, but they're there. They work quite a lot of the time, but not 100%.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge. And in the world we live in, again, we're so fast. That's getting harder and harder to do. But it's a powerful thing when you can.
I want to talk about goals because I know you're big into goals and achieving goals. And first, before we go into a deep dive of fulfilling goals, we had an interesting conversation today over lunch about the balance in your life when you're setting out for goals. And I think that's important as well. You know, it's important to have goals, but that they're within a time as well. So you're not losing out on everything else in life.
Yeah. And that's really important, Gary. And as I was saying earlier on, I've worked with many leaders over the years, right? And leaders at the top of their game have brought their business to the top of their industry, right? At the consequence of the rest of their lives.
And we're talking family, we're talking health.
Absolutely. Family, aspirations, like maybe spiritual, religious, financial. And obviously, if they focus on their business and they get financial goals, right? And then they've lost their health and they've lost their families. And I've seen this happen, Gary, too many times. And with both relationships and health, it's past the point of no return. And now they can't even enjoy the money they've earned through the work that they put in. So, and we mentioned the word balance, and I've always struggled with the word balance, because if you try and find balance and you go, right, like a weighing scale, so a bit here and a bit there, they'll balance each other out. But you're never going to get that because things stretch you all the time, right? So what I've learned over time to get all the different aspects of your life in a state of harmony, right? And I like to use the analogy of an orchestra conductor where there's many instruments at play, some always in the background on low level, right? Just the rhythm and the beat. And then different instruments coming in at different times that come in and out, but they're all in harmony because they're being conducted. So it's about being the conductor of your life and keep everything in harmony, where you flex one goal for a period, but that has to get back to a sort of state of homeostasis to give you now time to work. You've done a personal goal and you've achieved a race in a run or something that you've aspired to do that's set you above and beyond. But then, you know what? I need to spend time with my family now, and we're going to go on a nice holiday. I'm going to give time to my daughters, my sons, my wife, and I'm going to make sure my relationships and my extended family and friends too. And then, you know what? Also, then I have like spiritual goals that I want to achieve. I want to learn more about me and how I can be the best version of me for me, number one, but the best version of me for the people around me. So when I'm busy in work, when things aren't going according to plan, because life can be a roller coaster, how am I not the ASSHOLE when that happens? That I learn to compose myself and be the leader for my business in those tough times and the leader for my family too. And that's why it's so important to make sure they're in harmony.
Yeah.
And you don't. You set goals in multiple parts of your life for the main reason so you don't forget about them.
Yeah, yeah. And, if you really want to achieve something, sometimes you got to go all in and go hard at it and just give it all your focus and intention for a long period of time. So, for example, I was talking about when I got married back in 2011, I went from 100 kg to 82 kg that year. It was all about getting fit, getting strong, and sole purpose was losing weight. So I was training all the time, 7 days a week nearly. I was so pernickety with what I was eating and saying no to so many foods and not going out socializing because I didn't want to be drinking alcohol and I didn't want to be staying out late. I wanted to get good sleep. And I did that for from February till August. So I did a good kind of solid 6 months of that to achieve the goal, which I achieved. But it wasn't sustainable and I couldn't keep doing it or it'd all be over after the honeymoon. But it is that thing. Sometimes there's big goals we want to achieve and we go hard in at it, whether it's in business or personal life or family life, whatever. But we can't give it that depth and sole focus all the time or continuously forever because we lose out on so much. So it is good to have the big goals and to focus on them, but just the realization of you have to just set a boxed off period for them.
Oh yeah, and it's a really good point, Gary, on multiple levels. One is you had a goal and you achieved it, so fantastic, right? And then what I
put it all on the honeymoon, then just eating ice cream and drinking beer.
But see here two things, right? And sometimes you have to do disruptive things, right? Disrupt your own routines, disrupt things, because it's not just about working hard. It's about you have to change what you're doing to get different results. You can't just work harder to get different results because they'll just get the same results in a bigger way, right? You have to disrupt. So maybe that 6 months was to get you back into a state of homeostasis with your body, and then you go through a maintenance phase, right? But it has to be, and you may have to sacrifice in the short term, Gary, but then you have to go, now how do I make it sustainable? How can I live a life where I can go to the gym instead of 7 days a week, as you said, go 4 days a week? And because you don't need to keep disrupting, use that disruption energy for the long term. Because guess what happens? If you try and do that, you'll burn out, you'll get fed up of it, and you can actually go the other way, a 100%, do a complete 180.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the danger. And that's what people do. They do yo-yo diets and then all of a sudden they get to the level they want to be, and then they start eating. They think they can get away with murder, but guess what? They actually put on weight quicker because that's what they've taught their body to go up and down, and then it'll start doing it really efficiently, which is not good. So again, to your point, and what I like, health is a big one for me, as you know, but I always say, like, if you eat 3 meals a day, that's 21 meals a week. If you had 2 cheat meals, even 3, you're still 90+% compliant. Habits make it the way, right? So 3 bad meals or a few drinks on a night are not going to change the good work you're doing.
Yeah.
But it's actually making it more sustainable. So a little bit of bad is also quite good.
Yeah. Let's talk about goals then, and the importance of achieving goals.
Yeah. Well, what's the point of setting goals if you're not going to achieve them?
True.
Right? And I say that sincerely, Gary, because when you look at, like, give the example of gyms after Christmas, right? And not just Christmas, December, right? Where people have just gone all out parties, Christmas parties, meeting old friends, meeting family, Christmas dinner, right? Leftovers from Christmas dinner, leftovers more of Christmas dinner, and it adds up, right? And then people go, do you know what? I need to go to the gym, right? And they've got motivation, which is very important. Don't get me wrong, Gary. Motivation is great. And they have a great month of January, and then they, do you know what? I don't like the gym. And they drop off, right? Because they're not doing things with purpose. They're doing it because they think it's the right thing to do. The first step of achieving a goal is making sure you're going to do it with purpose. There has to be a reason of why. And even people who give up smoking or trying to, if they don't have a reason, they can try and they more than likely fail because they don't have a reason. Yeah, they know it's good for your health to give up smoking. It's healthy not to smoke, and my health may improve. But is that good enough?
Yeah.
People know it's unhealthy, but they still do it. So it's not. But so if you said, well, do you know what? You've gotten some really bad news. And if you don't change now, you may get past that point of no return. That could be it for you.
Yeah.
Or do you know what? I have kids. I want to teach them good behaviors. I don't want them to see me smoke. That could be the one for you. That could be the purpose. But it has to be real and resonant and relevant to you. Otherwise, you won't achieve.
Like for me, so I know with losing the weight, the purpose there was I wanted to be almost as hot as the bride on the day, you know, so there was that fixed goal, the wedding day, you know, so that was the challenge. Years and years ago, I smoked for a little period of my life and I stopped, and it was that thing of I didn't want anything to have a hold over me. So I think
that's a really good point, actually.
Nelson Mandela done the same. I think with people before was this thing of not relying on something that has a hold over you or could be used against you to manipulate you or whatever. So that was the thing that knocked on the head for me with cigarettes years ago. But yeah, you really, really have to, in your loins, believe in the purpose.
And why that's so important. And it takes time to get there, Garry. It truly does. And again, we'll come on to what I did earlier in the year. I told you about my purpose for what I want to do. I cannot tell you how long in my mind I built that out of my mind before I said I'd do something about it, because I wanted to make sure it was the right thing to do. And here's the reason why. Like, you mentioned the word motivation. Motivation is great at getting you to the pitch, right? Discipline will keep you there, right? And they're both important, and we need to use them all often. Leverage motivation for what it is. It's short term. It's doing things when you feel like doing them.
Yeah.
Discipline is doing the thing you need to do that you don't want to do, but you do it anyway, right? Sometimes you need a bit of motivation to get that spark, right? And I'll give a really good example, and I'm not saying do this, right? But just to demonstrate the power of motivation when it's used correctly. So, but the whole point of having purpose, things will get tough. You will want to give up. That's the whole point of doing hard things on purpose, because they're challenging you. They're setting you out of your current set of boundaries and limitations. So you're looking to overcome them. It's not supposed to be easy. It's not. So when you have strong purpose, that is what will bring you through the discipline when you need to. If you don't have that, the chances are you'll give up.
Now, how do you get discipline?
Practice. So let's talk about motivation first, right? So as humans, we're really good at setting intentions for future events.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes we're in the mood to do things now, right? And we don't know why, but we do.
But in 4 weeks' time, we're going to have loads of intentions for 2025.
Exactly, right? But those intentions are for next year, right? Not now, right? So, for example, if you decide I want to start running before work every morning, we've got great motivation to set the alarm clock the night before, okay? And then when 5 o'clock comes, snooze button, snooze button, snooze button, right? And then we're disappointed in ourselves and we feel let down and we think we're not good enough to do this. So there's a mental element that will actually work against you to try and do it again, and you give up. And you're worse off than when you were before having thought about getting up at 5 o'clock, because you feel you can't achieve anything, right? So it can work against us. So how do we work it for us? And this is just an example, Garry. So if you decided, right, you want to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning.
I did it this morning. I set the alarm for 6:20.
Oh, fair
and
play.
I snoozed it.
Yeah. Did you actually get up for the... No, there we go. So do you want to hear a way of absolutely getting up?
Okay.
Right? Number one, you have to get that trigger energy, right? And what I mean by that, you have to get a reason to get out of bed, right? So here's an example. 6:20 is what you set your alarm clock. I'm going to propose you get a second alarm clock, set it for 6:25 and put it outside one of your kids' bedroom, right? Because I guarantee you will get up. And I'm not saying do that, but you understand, you're motivated now to get up.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
And then when you're up, then you want to go for a run. And I do a lot of long distance running. And sometimes when the weather is absolutely miserable, I've been at my desk working and I don't have any energy because I've been sedentary for a while. So your body goes into a different state. You've no mental or physical motivation whatsoever to do a run, and your brain will convince you not to do it. Your brain doesn't want you to do something hard because that involves energy, it involves risks, and it wants to protect you. That's your brain is a protective and predictive mechanism, and it will convince you. If you give it enough time, it'll convince you not to do it, and you'll justify it, right?
Absolutely.
So you have to override your own programming. So let's step back. We talked about, even in some of the business stuff, we have to make it frictionless for your customers, like make it easy for them to go in your favor, not against you, right? So remove the friction to buy. You have to remove the friction from doing what you're doing and break it down into its smallest components. Like James Clear talks about atomic habits.
Yeah.
You want to go for a run. So when I have to think about these big, long runs, and sometimes over mountains, right? I don't think about it. I absolutely do not think about it. I think about, well, my first goal is to put my clothes on, my running clothes on. That's my first goal. Tiny habit, tiny step, right? Easy. And then once I've done that, my goal is just go outside the front door, close the door. And then I decide, should I go for the run? Guess what, Gary? Never once when I've broken it down like that have I gone back in the door. Because one, I've got up, I put on my clothes, I've gone outside the door, I've created a bit of energy now. I actually feel mentally and physically better. And now I go for the run. And I've never not gone for the run taking that approach. So breaking it down to its smallest components, and even to make it, if it's like 6 o'clock in the morning when you get up, make sure they're the first clothes you see. Your runners and your running clothes are beside your bed.
Yeah.
So make it as easy as possible. And if you struggle, put that alarm clock outside your kids'
that definitely work.
bedroom.
They'd kill me if I
They'll
woke
kill you.
up
There
and
you
have
go.
sex.
There you go. That's motivation. That's how you leverage motivation.
Just in terms of goals, then just go through the sequence, the acronym that you've come up with or whatever.
So, like, I knew I was good at achieving stuff, partly because I'm very stubborn. I don't like, to your point about having something a hold on me.
Yeah.
I didn't like stuff that could control me. And if my mind didn't let me do stuff, I didn't want my mind. We don't control our minds. We have to lead our minds. There's programming there that we need to leverage, right? We can use it for good. We can use it for bad. So we want to use what's there and leverage. Even if you think they're bad patterns, like that tell bad stories, we can actually repurpose those stories.
Yeah.
It's powerful. So I did a lot of deep diving into all of this. So the simple thing, Gary, is I created a 7-step process called Conquer Your Goals, right? And they're not all chronological. The first 3 are the CON. That's where are you today, your current state, right? Understand where are you in relation to this goal, good, bad, or indifferent, right? And then you could also use it as current state in multiple parts of your life. Where do I need to work on most at this moment in time? So you can use it as a way to find out where are you lacking or where do you want to improve, okay? And then the O, once you start looking through this.
So this Conquer, CONQUER, is what we call an anagram.
An anagram, right? And then the O is the objective. So what are you looking to achieve? And this is where, whatever you decide, this is where you have to go deep and go, why do I want to do this? Why is this important to me? And sometimes you may go on, okay, I'm going to start doing this. Then you realize it's not what I thought it was. And no point in continuing on that journey, because you'll lose motivation, and then you lose motivation for doing anything. It can have a negative consequence. So that you have to really go back. Why didn't that work for me? Why wasn't I that motivated? And then you go, well, the purpose wasn't right. So it's important to take time here to think about that objective and think deeply. And I'll relate it back to my journey at the moment of what I want to do. And then once you do that, you've gone there. The next chronological step is the N, the nitty gritty, the project plan, the plan, nuts and bolts. How are you going to get there? How you go from your current state that we've just talked about to where you need to be?
Yeah.
There has to be a set of activities. But this is the problem, Gary. If what I say to people where they fail is because they try and they fail once, or they fall once and then they say, I knew I couldn't do it. And they give up. And that's because they didn't take other steps. And I call that the con. If you only do those, you're conning yourself if you think you can. And you may succeed, but you're opening it up. You're leaving it to chance, right? So they're the 3 chronological steps that will take you from the day you start to the day you finish, right? But then the QUER sit over on top. Q is to qualify to help. You don't have to do it on your own. The best people in the world don't do it. Never got to be the best people in the world by doing it by themselves. So find out the people or the things that are going to help you get there, right?
Yeah.
And then the use and block the obstacles. There's internal obstacles. That's the stories you tell yourself you're not good enough. How do you change, reframe those words? Instead of saying, I'm not good enough, I can't do this, to I can do this when, right? Change, rephrase, and reframe those words. And it's amazing how when you do that, how much more you can give and grow your current set of limitations. And then E is the end game, visualization. This has to be all the way through. Once you've set that objective, you have to eat, sleep, and breathe it for a period of time.
Yeah, that visualization of you having achieved your goal is massive.
Yeah. And then how do we get the neurotransmitters to respond to all this? And this is where recognition and reward. So we are driven by hormonal hits, right? Our neurotransmitters. And we've got a range of them, like dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. They're the three main ones people know, right? And adrenaline and neuroepinephrine, right? They're the ones that people know. And then we have the endorphins, the happy hormones, they say. And then you have anandamide, which is the bliss hormone. These are just some of the neurotransmitters we have. So we want to make sure we get our hits of whatever to achieve our purpose. That's why the purpose is so important. Then when we start doing these activities, they mean something. And if you say you're going for a 5K run and you achieve that, you get that reward, that hit. And then when you celebrate, the whole point of the recognition and reward is to celebrate. If you celebrate and qualify to help you bring people on the journey with you, you strengthen those synaptic pathways. The dopamine hits are going to help the serotonin. And then when you celebrate, the oxytocin is the sort of friendship, love hormone. When you create those bonds with people, that's going to encourage you to do that behavior. Your brain will reward behaviors. So make those behaviors good. It'll also reward bad behaviors. So if you turn to like whatever, alcohol and drugs, when things to get those hits, your brain will reward you to say, we want this again.
Yeah.
But you have to use them for good. So that's why those 4 steps overarching the chronological steps are so important. And again, I've done an ultramarathon this year, and going back to the purpose, I didn't just do it for the sake of doing an ultramarathon. I'm doing it because I want to raise a lot of money for charity. And I raised money, as I said before, I did a boxing fight and raised money for Our Lady's Hospice to honor a friend's mother who passed away, and they were amazing to her. So I raised money for them. And then roll on 7 years, my mother died of cancer, and her end of life, they were amazing to her. And I can't tell you how much it touched me and my family. And I always felt it was great karma coming back. And I know we're in Galway now. My mum was a Galway girl. She never got back to Galway before she passed, and it was a regret. And she turned down an opportunity because my dad wanted to bring her to a lovely hotel here in Galway City, and she turned it down because she thought it was too expensive, right? And it was, and she regretted it, and so she never got back to Galway. So again, to raise money and to honor my mum and the journey and the pain that she went through, I want to run from her family home in Galway to my family home and raise money.
Your family home is in Dublin.
Dublin.
So you want to run from Galway to Dublin,
right? In one fell swoop. And that's why
when you say one swoop now, this is not having a night in Offaly and a night in Kildare.
It's a start,
I know Offaly isn't on the way, but
yeah.
Something's going to mess you there.
That's the scenic route, right? That's the scenic route. Okay, I'm not interested in the scenic route. I'm going direct as the crow flies, right? Okay, right.
I wasn't going to geography in school.
But yeah, and I do, and the reason why I know that.
But what distance is from this family home in Galway?
She's in Ballinasloe, so it's not always to Galway City. It's about 140k, about 95 miles or so.
Wow.
And that's pretty close to 4 marathons in one go. And so I did an 80k ultra marathon this year, and I said, if I can do this, so it's a stepping stone.
Shay, you did an 80k ultra marathon.
Yeah.
But let's just break that down a little bit as well. This wasn't flat.
No.
This was up mountains, down mountains. You tore a calf muscle, you cracked a rib. Like, it was a horrendous experience.
Pretty much, right? It was horrendous, amazing, horrible, epic, all rolled into one every minute of that race, right? And I'll explain that. That sounds very, very hard to comprehend for people. And it was over mountains, the Wicklow, all over the Wicklow Mountains. And again, just by the way, before I go into the journey, we talked about the different areas of our lives. I made a commitment that if I'm going to do this journey, it has to complement my health. So I did what's called goal stacking, right? So I did a lot of physical. I went to cardiologists. I went to an gastrologist. I went to many experts to give me the go ahead of my body, right? To make sure that my body can do it, number one, right? And then I actually did some genetic and metabolic testing to actually see, well, what am I disposed to genetically and what do I need to overcome? And also, even pre to this, I had grade 3 hypertension and heart disease, and I had to make sure they were cleared before. And I did this all naturally. And so this has been a long journey in the making, Garry. It's been a few years in the making. And so whatever commitment I made, it didn't just have to not damage my health. It had to improve my health for the long term. So whatever I've learned on this journey has to improve my health. So, and I'm not joking, Garry, when I say the genetic testing and metabolic testing, like, were unreal in terms of how I tailored nutrition and a tailored new supplement plan to improve my health. And then the whole point of talking about the mindset, the breath work that I needed to learn how to breathe effectively. So we all breathe, but I'll tell you now, 99% of people, even more, don't know how to breathe correctly. So I had to make sure my breathing improves, and that's breathing through my nose and out through my nose, even when I'm going up these crazy hills, because that's how you should breathe, you know?
Not out through your mouth.
Not through your mouth,
okay.
Right? And I can tell you again, there's so many benefits to it, and that engages the parasympathetic system, the calming part of your system, not the fight or flight. When you're breathing through your mouth, you engage the fight or flight,
Right.
and it releases the hormones. So very simple. Like, your brain, as I said, is a protective mechanism. If your breathing changes, so it sees, if your brain thinks you're still in the jungle, hunter-gatherer style, and your breathing can tell your brain, okay, maybe you need to get out of danger here. And so releases the fight or flight hormones, adrenaline and cortisol. So you have that amazing set of energy to run up a tree and get out of dodge for a short period. And then what's really important, when you get out of danger, it releases a cocktail of dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and a few others. And that is like the cocktail of happy hormones that you've overcome adversity, right? But the thing is, we live in a world now where our brains thinks we're in these jungles. We're fight or flight because we're breathing. We've got all these priorities, and we're overworked. We're overwhelmed at work. And then we're compounding that by releasing stress hormones all the time. So this breath work that I do, even when I'm 60 kilometers in, I'm still breathing in for 4 and out for 6. And the fact that I breathe longer on the exhale and through my nose, my brain knows I'm calm, and it releases the calming hormones. And it's so powerful if you want to get in the moment. And I was saying to you, I'm a time-bound person, 60 kilometers in, time meant nothing. Like, I'm not going, oh my God, I have another 3 hours to run. I was going, oh my God, I've only 20 kilometers to go. And I was able to get there through my breath work, right? And it was fascinating. But going back to genetic testing, I eat a lot of food that has a lot of B vitamins in it, but my genetics tell me I don't break down B vitamins from food. I'm a what's called methylator. And my metabolic test confirmed that. So I have to take a certain type of B complex, a methylated form. And when I started taking that, Garry, my energy shifted to another gear. And not like you can always do the activity, but it's the recovery that made a difference. I recovered faster. That allowed me.
Is that from a blood test then that you get that metabolic breakdown?
Do you know what? It was a swab test, a mouth swab test. And so many.
From a GP, or you send it off?
No, from a company who does this genetic, specialize in it. And that was a game changer, Garry. So I've already solved potential health risks further down the road, because if you can't absorb B vitamins, you're going to have lots of issues, health issues further down the road. So again, my challenge was to make sure whatever I do has to make my health better. So we talked about that harmony. I did two things at once: health and what sounds like a crazy activity to do, but it's just if you think of the length of your life and you do it in a certain way, that it's going to be a very big challenge at a short, brief moment in time, but that's going to improve your health further down the road because you've done it in such a way. And now I took a month off running. Well, I couldn't run because I had a cracked rib and a torn calf. But I took a month off. My body's healed. I gave it time to heal. So now I'll go be back stronger, right? So it is, and the reason why...
And you kind of dedicated, I know you spent years getting ready for this, but you spent, 4 to 6 months really focused in training and nutrition and so on, getting yourself ready for the ultramarathon. And then it's that, 11, 12, 13-hour experience of doing the actual thing. And you said something really interesting over lunch is, having done that and other marathons in the past, is there's times you show up and not everything is ideal or perfect for you. You mightn't have got a good night's sleep, or you might have a dodgy stomach that morning, or the weather could be crap or something like that. But that's life. There's never ideal situations, but you still gotta forge through and carry on.
But and this is why I have this mantra that I say, to do hard things on purpose, Gary. And it falls back to, and again, I told you about a challenging time for me in number 2007 and 8 and 9 with the recession and other personal things. Life hits you. Life is a roller coaster. We have to give ourselves the skills in life to deal. The world has gone soft, Gary. We're not, like, we've made the life. I know we have first world problems, don't get me wrong, and they're very real, but we're not life in danger real. And there are a lot of these problems, a lot of them are fear-based because we don't know how to deal with certain things. So how do we deal with it? Is learn to do hard things on purpose, right? Truly. And it gives you the skills. And again, we talked about people fail at achieving stuff because they've only built a happy path, right? And I talked about unblocking the obstacles. So there's two types of obstacles. The internal, the stories we tell ourselves we're not good enough and we're never going to be able to achieve that. That's what your brain wants to tell you, right? Because it doesn't want you to do it. It'd love you to sit on a couch watching Netflix all day long because it doesn't want you to hurt yourself or be in danger. And then the external inputs, the obstacles and what people tell us and family members, you can't do that. Don't do that. That's not good for you. Or all the other obstacles that are in front of you to stop you. We have to I'm not saying plow through them with tunnel vision, Gary. We need to take feedback. But I gave you the example, like, you have to stay on course, right? Yeah, you may have to evolve and iterate and tweak that course, right? But you can't fundamentally change or do something different and go the opposite direction, because every time you do that, you're just going back to the start.
Yeah.
Right? You need to say, this is my big goal in life. And like, that's part of your big goal is to be happy. Happy involves family, involves your kids, and involves having the energy to enjoy all that, run a business and make sure they're all harmonious, right? And happy for me is very important, but happy isn't on a couch watching Netflix. Happy is overcoming adversity. Happy is improving your boundaries all the time, little by little. Happy is making sure your family are happy, right? All these things we have to build, and there's so many obstacles in life to stop this. If we don't equip ourselves with the skill sets, we won't be able to. And I heard a great quote on a podcast, it could be about a year ago now, Gary, and it was in the 40s, so it was directed at men, right? So it was a different time, but it was, the original quote was, tough times create tough men. Tough men create soft times create soft men, right? We're in a world of soft at the moment on many different levels. And the reason why the likes of ultramarathons now, and I read a great book of why they're exploding now. And there was a guy, and going back to part of the process about is qualify to help, absorb yourself in that sphere So me, it was ultra running. I joined a trail running club. I watched documentaries on ultra runners. I read books on ultra runners, and I read a great book about the rise of the ultra runner, who's an English journalist to Irish parents. And his editor asked him, he was a very good marathon runner. He asked him to do a series of ultras, to do the main ultra, which is UTMB, which is Mount Blanc, right?
Okay.
And that's, if you think 80 is crazy, this is like 240k crazy over mountains and bigger mountains, right? So I'm only baby crazy, Gary, right?
Okay.
There's levels to this, right? But when he was interviewing, he said what he couldn't get over, what he was just profoundly in awe of, was the amount of older people doing these massive ultramarathons, like people in their 60s, couples, married couples. And he was interviewing these people. And do you know what the most common theme was of their answers was? Our life is too comfortable. We need to overcome pain. And that's very important, Gary, because we are built to overcome adversity. We've got all the systems, the stress systems, the fight or flight systems, and stress is important for us. We need to use these systems, not to have them used every day, but we need to engage with them on a frequent basis for us to be fulfilled, and also to get these right hits of hormones and neurotransmitters so we feel happy, right? If we don't, we'll turn to other things, Gary. And that's the problem in the world. Too many other negative things are so easy accessible to us. So when we do all these things, and I call it hard things on purpose, we become fulfilled. So people used to say, I like pain. It's not. I love overcoming adversity.
But when you say fulfilled, you learn so much about yourself. Like even you were saying that after tearing your calf muscle and cracking a rib, it got to a stage of every kilometer you were nearly kind of high-fiving yourself because you're like, I've done another kilometer. And it was this thing of keep pushing yourself. And you learn so much about oneself when you keep pushing, and, you know, instead of just giving up and calling it a day, that you just keep fighting.
Yeah, and to know, Gary, and that's why segueing back to your point about, this is not just representative of that activity that you're doing in that moment. It's a part of your character, of how you act in all parts of your life. And if you take a step, the hardest step in anything you want to do that's outside your comfort zone is the first. That's both a step forward or a step back. And whatever step you make, the second time you're faced with this, that first step becomes easier and easier. And that's for good or bad, Gary. Right? Yeah. So if you choose to step forward and overcome a fear, the next time you face something that fears you, it's easier to make that first step forward because you know you can do it. You've proven it. But also if you go backwards once, it's easier to go backwards. So it's very reflective of how you act in the different parts of your life. So that's another reason of how you learn about yourself. And for me, like, I had many mantras prepared for when things went wrong. I just didn't know they'd go so early, right? But again, going back to life, one of my mantras was, this pain will pass. Time always moves forward, right? Tomorrow this will be over. Stay in the moment. And for me, as a very time-bound person, I couldn't believe how much I could actually get. The more pain I felt, and the more I physically struggled, the better my mind went. And like, I had to really step back after that experience and go, how did I get there? Right? Because that was new. So this is going back to about the learnings you do. And even in that moment, I was going, how did I get here? And I was saying earlier, I had these caffeine gels to give me that hit when I really needed them. But I didn't take them because I was so in a great place with my mind. I was afraid that any caffeine or anything would change that. So I was even happy to suffer that extra bit of pain to keep my mind where it was and stay in that moment. And that was a fascinating moment for me during it. And that's why I had no music, mostly on my own for 12 hours, running through crazy mountains, lots of pain. You learn who you are. You truly do, Gary. And I think everybody should do some hard things. I'm not saying doing crazy stuff like that, but learn to do certain hard things on purpose. Start small.
Yeah.
little by little.
Like getting up at 6:20 in the morning.
Yeah, and by the way, Gary, not just don't say I'm going for a 5K. Make it easy. Go for a 1K, because your goal is to build a habit. Start small, and start building the time on the idea of doing this on a regular basis. Even 500 meters, right? And even if that 500 meters is a bit of a walk because you're only starting, that's okay. Set yourself very small goals and build. I didn't go out. I didn't say like I'm going to do an 80K ultramarathon and go tomorrow I'm going to do the 80K ultramarathon.
Yeah.
I had to build up slowly. And again, one of the other things my genetic test said, I suffer with soft tissue damage. I can't tell you how many times before this race I've been injured. I told you I did Dingle and I hadn't run in 5 weeks, right? And this was the first time, through knowing, again, not just B vitamin, certain amino acids I don't absorb. So I have to take a certain type of amino acid that helps repair and regenerate your soft tissues. And I was going, I'm so happy I'm not injured, until an hour into the... But again, turning my mindset to gratitude that I still had a chance was absolute a game changer during that race.
Kind of goes back as well to sales and all that as well, where, you know, the times where things mightn't all be going to plan, and not to embrace the challenge because no one likes to, but you know that you can get through those hard times, those difficult times, those quiet times. The time does pass and so on. And know that there is a good, strong fighter within you to keep going.
And that's like, it's especially true in life, Gary, and especially true in business, especially as a leader in your position. But when it comes to sales, it is fundamental, right? You will not be a good salesperson if you don't have that tenacity and resilience. You have to, because you get so many doors slammed in your face. You actually tell people telling you what you do sucks, right? Even if it doesn't, and it doesn't, but that's just a moment that person is in, and that's their karma, not yours. You're just in the wrong place at the wrong time, right? You have to allow yourself take all these hits. And I love the Rocky, like, because it's one of my favorite.
Rocky poster in our office. Yeah.
I have it at the back of my home office as well. And it's like the world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place. I have that there on my wall to remind me to not play the victim. And when I'm taken to the floor, to continually get back up. And that's what it takes. You have to have that mindset in sales. You have to build a process, as we're doing. And then, no, it's not just about a process. You have to build a mechanism that touches people, even at the prospecting stage, that adds value to them before the sale. You make them feel important. You give them something to continue thinking about you, Gary, in a positive way. And it will eventually. It's the law of averages. It's the law of percentages. And it's about being very targeted and building your first step, your first understanding of the best way to get there. But it's not the best way. It's your first understanding. It's all theory, right? Now you have to learn. Now your goal is not to get it right in the beginning. Your first goal is to get it started. Build what you believe. And then your commitment is to continually iterate and improve it by getting that feedback, those micro feedbacks. And little by little, over the course of 6 months of the year, you're going to have an amazing sales ecosystem. But you have to stick to it. Because remember we talked about in the canteen example, right?
The healthy queue and the unhealthy.
The healthy queue and the unhealthy queue. They're both busy, right? And you start the healthy queue because you have this really good intention. You've got this willpower, Gary, right?
So you join the healthy queue.
Join the healthy queue, but it's slow. And the further you keep going up little by little, that smell of that burger and fish and chips that you love starts to get stronger and stronger. And eventually you're going to know what? Today, and only today, I'm going to go for it. But guess where? You have to go back to the start of the queue.
Back at the unhealthy queue now.
And the start of it, right? So you have to understand, if you keep chopping and changing, you'll always be at the start. So that's why you have to tweak. You have to get feedback, because you don't just go tunnel vision, Gary. You have to get feedback and continually tweak. And the analogies I like to use are either a boat on a sea or a plane in the air. they have many variables to contend with, right? So the winds and the waves and the tides are pushing them off course. So they're spent 95% of the time off course. But guess what? They get data, they get feedback to bring them back on course, right? And they start off course. Like if you look at a channel and you go point A to point B and as the crow flies and you say a boat, I'm going to go there straight across, but then you've got this tide, it's going to push you downstream, right? So you have to learn how to negotiate that, but know there's an end game and have to figure out the best way to get there and keep tweaking that all the time.
Yeah, because I always say, even with goals, using the boat analogies, you need to know ultimately where your destination is. Otherwise, you're just going to be bobbing around in the water.
Yeah, with no purpose.
Yeah.
And just keep ticking over it. You may do some things good and you don't know why they're good, but you do them, and then some things bad, you don't know why. But
Exactly.
you get some good results, some bad results, and you just keep ticking over.
But even mentioning purpose there, and I think it's, we spoke about purpose, the importance of goals and all that, but I think even in sales, knowing your purpose, knowing why you do what you do, like it has to be genuine, it has to be authentic. Like if your goal in your sales process is to help people, you genuinely need to be someone who wants to help people. It has to be truly part of your purpose. Otherwise, it won't work in your ecosystem.
And I can't tell you how important that quote is, right? Otherwise, you'll never. And when I started this process, I grew up, my dad was a jeweler, right? And I grew up in the business with him, and I saw how he worked, and he was a great salesperson, but I didn't understand why. And then when I built, for my first business, when I built my sales process, and then built, as we talked about, well, where are the touch points, right, for the prospects, even before the sale, and then how do we make them amazing touch points and add value and give them a great experience, right, even before the sale, right?
Yeah.
Building that, going from that being liked to be trusted enough in a very short, finite amount of steps to be given the opportunity to try once, right? And I built all this, and then I started teaching it, Garry. Once I left that business, once we turned that around in the recession, I had a purpose to help other people do what I did. And I sold my part of that business, and they're still doing amazing today, and we're still great friends. But I had a calling, I believe, to help people do what I did, because I love it's part of my DNA to help. And the reason why I'm telling that is when I said I better do some sales courses to learn the jargon and the lingo and all that, so we could talk to salespeople. And then when I was learning, I was saying to myself, my dad did that. My dad did that. My dad did that. And these are all things deep rooted in psychology. Like I said, don't bring up talking about what you're selling until they say it to you and they invite you in to talk.
Yeah.
Right? And then, because when they invite you in, they're going to listen. Right? It's a psychological process. Well, my dad did that. My dad did that.
Because it's like the thing, if you're in a shop and someone comes up and says, what can I help you with? You kind of, again, you recoil.
You recoil and close up.
Yeah.
And then I realized when I came to it, my dad did all that because he was a really good person who wanted to make sure people went away with something they really and truly wanted, and he gave them the best deal. And he truly cared, and that came across because he's a very genuine guy.
So he would be saying, how are you today?
Yeah, how are you today? And making
so open a conversation.
Open it, and eventually they will say, look, I'm looking for something like this, right? And then he would help them, and I'm not joking.
They've opened the sales process then by saying that.
And they've invited him in to talk.
Yeah.
But he didn't do that because he knew that was a psychological thing. He loved talking to people and loved helping people, right? And that's just the way it transpired. And you do these things naturally. So some of this may sound complicated, right? But if you're a genuine person who truly wants to help, your persona will do this naturally, right? And he did all those things. And he was an amazing salesperson, but he never sold. He never sold anything to anyone that they didn't want. And he never overcharged one person. And he would always give person the best deal because he wanted them happy. And I'll give you a great example, selling an engagement ring to a guy who was sweating buckets knowing, will this be the right ring for them? And how much do I spend? And he'd always say, look, if they don't like the ring, tell them to come back. We can change, right? And then some people, sometimes they would, and he would change. And guess what? We talked about, Garry, about the importance of giving that experience. Then they would tell their friends, their other friends, and so forth. And because he looked after them so well, they want their friends to be looked after, and they knew my dad could look after them. And they were his best salespeople, Garry.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't tell you many times where I've been in situations where people have said, I have a great jeweler, because I wear a bit of jewelry. I know a great jeweler. And I said, well, my jeweler is better than your jeweler. And they go, no, my jeweler is better than your jeweler. And then we find out we're talking about my dad.
Okay.
And that's happened multiple times.
Brilliant.
And that's, again, talking about relationships.
Yeah.
How you build relationships that last. And he opened we did a little sort of mapping out on this. There was his first customer when he opened his shop in 1967. And we reckon over the course of all those years before he retired, there was over 1,000 people that she brought in or connected to her. 1,000 people. I know it's a long period of time,
Wow.
but that's a lot of people, right? And that's built slowly, step by step, the long game.
Yeah, absolutely. When are you going to do your big run?
Planning next year, Garry, but I have another, maybe this time, maybe September, October next year, but I've done 80 over mountains, right? And I'm going to 140, so I need a little bit of another race in between. So I'm planning to do 100 in May, right? Okay. Through another ultra through the mountains, but not as crazy elevation as what I did. And then that'll May, another month to recover, so I come back stronger, and then get into running for this in maybe late September, October.
Brilliant, for charity
next year, for charity. And I don't take these things for granted. I truly hope my body can do this, because I really want to do it to raise money for an amazing hospice who do amazing. And again, Garry, it's a horrible time for people and families, but these people are vocationists. They truly care.
Yeah.
And people who are very stressed, knowing their end of life, very anxious, and how they deal with them is just, it has to be seen to be believed, Garry.
Yeah.
And it touches you, it truly does. And it leaves an imprint on you. And that's why I'm doing it. And I'm doing it to honor the strength my mom showed, and to be strong enough for her. And that's the purpose.
Good man. And if people want to get more information, you can find Shay Lynch on LinkedIn. We had a great buzz today. You were writing notes on the whiteboard. I was beside you writing other notes. Then I was writing notes on the computer, writing notes on my notepad. I have to put it all together into one system eventually. But we were just buzzing for hours today with ideas and plans and so on. And it was really, really great fun. And I know we've been doing it for the last few months, and we'll continue to do it. But look, thank you so much. I know I'm in good hands, safe hands, trustworthy hands, and I've someone there as well shouldering our business to help us reach the goals we want to reach. So thank you, Shay.
You're welcome, Garry. It's an absolute pleasure. And I don't do this with companies unless I really truly believe I can help them. And it's always great to work with people who really want to take their business forward and learn new things and apply them. And that's what I love, working with companies like yourself, because I see it being impacted and I see it acted upon. Yeah. And that's great for me. And it's just great. I love brainstorming and I love helping. So this is what I love to do.
Brilliant. Continued success.
Brilliant. And thank you. And likewise, Garry. And thanks so much for having me on your podcast. It's been a pleasure, and it's always great to have a chat.
Thanks, Shay.